We've got a number of people that are watching the streams in order to catch up on the content that we're providing in order to complete the workbook for Battle Apps. Just to summarize, the Battle Apps program, it allows you to ideate, come up with a concept, an idea for a mobile application, and describe that application and sort of work through the process, the business case, and sort of the ideation development of your concept without coding. So there's no requirement that you actually work through coding of this project. I do hope that later in the year we're going to have a hackathon where some of these ideas may come to fruition, and we may find a coder to actually sort of put some manpower into physically developing some prototypes based on these ideas. The other thing I'll mention is that we have other competitions going on through the year. We have the Arena Pitch competition that you can check out online. I think they've extended that deadline by a week. We've also just launched the Student Health Pitch. So we've got a competition that I think we've got 3 weeks left in order to submit your ideas. I know that some of the ideas that we've seen happen so far through Battle Apps would probably apply to that. So it might be a good idea to check out the Island Sandbox website, look for the Health Innovation Pitch link there, look at what's required for that, and maybe your application sort of works in that stream as well. So you get a bit of 2 for 1 on some of the work that you've been doing, putting together a concept for a business idea. So today we're going to look at the last bit of the workbook. So I'm going to just quickly switch over to share my screen. And look at the Battle Apps workbook, just to sort of look at the last part of it. And please, anyone online or in the room here, just feel free to throw up your hand or ask anything about any of the workbook elements that are there. This will be sort of your last chance as a group to look through this. So we've gone through the first bit of it. The first bit, name, address, information, common stuff. We talked about identifying a customer problem as being the core for this application idea, and what the benefits are to the customers, and how you sort of flesh out that benefit and those concepts. We talked about the market and perhaps focusing on something that's not just a local market product, but could apply not just to a local area, but to other local areas around the country or around the world. So keep that in mind. We talked about identifying your customer and describing them a little bit. Yep. So that's the market engagement hypothesis. So let's say you're making a product for dog owners. Okay. So you might say that you might do some research and find out there's 1 million dog owners in Canada. Okay. And you might hypothesize that 5% of these dog owners will purchase your product. So 5% of 1 million is Z. Okay, so you kind of work from the bottom up as much as possible, but like you don't just say, well, there's 8 billion people in the world and 1% of them is a huge market and I'm going to get that market. Identify dog owners, maybe dog owners that buy dry pet food. Okay, so it might be 1 million dog owners, 500,000 of them might buy dry pet food. Okay, and you're going to get 5% of that market. Okay, so at least 5% of X of Y, okay, will be Z number of potential customers. Yeah, so again, for the people online, the question is on the market engagement hypothesis and the X of Y will equal Z. Yes, be very specific. Okay, so if you're talking about people that go on vacation, well, there's a number, but the better number to work from might be, well, what number of people go on vacation in Cuba? What number of Canadians go to vacation in Cuba? What percentage of them might take advantage of my travel service? That's my Z. Yes. is your market. Yeah. So you think you can get 10% of that very specific segment. Okay. And it's important to have the very specific. Like I said, don't go off, population of Canada is this or population of the world is this. Find out what number of people actually participate in what you're looking at doing now, and then work off that. Okay.
But if we can't get that, yes,
You you can estimate, but I would guarantee that if it's a market for anything, there's a number out there. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. But you might also say percentage of people with autism that presently use assistive devices of some sort. You know what I mean? The more precise data you can get for that calculation, the better. You know what I mean by that? Yeah. And I get that. That's sort of to your question. You may not necessarily be able to, but if you can, the more specific you can get, the better. Okay. So it's not just people that vacation, it's people that vacation in Cuba. It's not just people that own dogs, it's people that own dogs that presently buy dry dog food. Okay. So try to get that extra level of specificity in order to come up with your X plus Y equals Z. Okay. Oh, it's X% of Y, yeah. X% of Y will equal Z. I probably mistyped that.
Yeah.
So. Say that again? Market engagement hypothesis, yeah. If I do this, then X% of this will do this. Okay, so if I invent a new spaceship to the moon, then X% of people that presently are interested in space travel will go to the moon. Okay, yeah, okay, good. And anyone online, please pipe up. I can hear you, so I can answer for any questions. Okay, good. Going back to the book. So, customer, as much detail as you can get here. And again, pay attention to basic stuff like real basic, like age, gender, occupation, like those are pretty straightforward. Other stuff like favorite products and brands, that gives you a bit of an insight. I find that one's really interesting to give someone an insight into their psyche right now. Like what kind of a customer are they? What products do they value now? And you may be able to get an idea of their inclinations based on the present actions that they undertake. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Families, yeah.
Families.
Yeah.
Then it is relatively easier to narrow down. But if a person is developing an application or service for the general market, let's say people who go to the hospital.
Okay.
Now, young people go to the hospital, elderly go to the hospital, working adult goes to the hospital.
Yeah.
In that case, what would you recommend? How should we fill this page? Because it's quite broad.
So everyone wears shoes, right? Most shoe stores specialize in women's shoes. Why is that? Women buy a lot more shoes than men. What else is unspoken in that question? Women make the buying decision for men's shoes a lot of the time. So if I was targeting, if I had a shoe store, I would target females because they not only obviously wear 50% of the shoes, they buy more shoes and they make the purchasing decisions for families. Okay. Healthcare. When do you use the most healthcare services in your life? Oh, no, it doesn't depend. It's very specific. When do you use the most healthcare services in your life? Yeah, so once you drill down, I mean, it's one thing to say, well, everybody eats bananas, but maybe not everyone eats bananas in the same proportions. And you want to put you want to put your effort into the low-hanging fruit, or the bulk of the market, so to speak. And it's not that middle-aged people that use hospital services don't matter. It's just that they use health services a lot less than someone that is either like you use most health services in like the first year of your life and the last year of your life. Pick a segment, like pick a segment. You know, Nike doesn't sell dress shoes. Okay, so pick a segment, pick an audience. Okay. So I've provided 2 different forms there. Please fill those out with as much detail as you can. I've skipped over these other templates, and I'm not going to dig into them. I'm just introducing them as something that, from a business perspective, you may want to do some further research on. Design thinking being a process where you empathize with your audience, you define and ideate, and you prototype, and heavy on prototype and coming up with tests, which this competition is. This is a way of prototyping an idea, and hopefully that will continue on to test and iterations, different versions of. So you're not required. If you do, good on you. That may work more to your benefit as well. I don't have the time to cover all of these within these sessions. These are things that I actually do as a standard course in other Sandbox programming. So if you kind of like some of what I've done and talked about here in the last couple of weeks, please come back for some of the other sessions that we're doing through the year. Okay, so we did some business sessions before Christmas that covered some of these things. I cover some of these things with other classes that I sort of come in and speak to. So you can sort of link on to the other, rather than me keep doing the same thing over and over again with smaller groups. I just give you the opportunity to sort of take part in generally what's happening here within the Sandbox. So lean business model is another one of these templates, these formats that talks about, identifying there's a lot of overlap here, identifying your problem, coming up with a solution, what's your unique value proposition, how do you monetize that? It asks you these questions to sort of flesh out your idea a little more. Story branding is another template where you sort of put yourself in the shoes of your customer, who is a hero, okay, the hero in this journey, and that hero has a problem, and they need a guide that actually leads them to the solution. Okay, this is the Star Wars branding model. Okay, Luke Skywalker's got a problem. Obi-Wan Kenobi leads him to a solution. He confronts his father. Okay, a whole bit. So it's a bit dramatic, but it really does put you in the mindset of solving someone's problem. Okay, recognizing them as the hero of their story. Value proposition canvas. Product benefits, features. What's out there in the market that could substitute for this? Again, another template. And then finally, so we're getting down to the last part of this. Describing your application. This free form field to describe your application is available for you. I'm going to skip ahead to the feature set for a second. So I've given you like a dozen fields to say, well, what are the features of this? And really think about, what is this application going to do? What specifically does it do? And itemize them. Now, you may not have 12. Maybe you've got one. Maybe it does one thing really well. And that's actually probably a good thing. I would suggest if you got 12 features, that probably muddies the water a bit. But having said that, the more specific you can make a product, oftentimes the more successful it could be, right? I think we talked about Scrub Daddy a couple of times. It does arguably one or two things, okay? Maybe 2 or 3, but it's very, very narrow casted kind of purpose. And when you get to the nut, what does your product actually do? What features? Okay. Now the features are different than the benefit it gets the customer. Okay. The feature of Scrub Daddy might be cleaning a pot, but what does it give you? Sense of pride. Okay. Sense of accomplishment. Wow, did I ever do a great job? Look at that pot. It sparkles. I feel self-worth now. Okay. So the benefit and the features are not the same, okay, but features are itemized here. And this is a data application, so I'm going to take a brief moment and talk about just a couple of general aspects of a mobile application. So what we often have is we have a front end, back end situation. What does the front end do? What does the back end do? So the front end is your phone. The front end is your tablet. The front end is that interface that you use and the customer actually touches. But stuff happens on the back end as well. So if you take a common app, like, I don't know, Airbnb, so the front end, the user is clicking on a city and a date and time. Great. But on the back end, the database is searching all of the listings in the area, finding geographically, okay, what meets your needs, finding what is booked and what is available, and then also pulling back pictures and text and video and information that helps service the front end. So there's a back end and a front end, okay? Same thing applies for, skip the dishes or any of these. You've got a front end. What does a user feel and touch and do? And what is the back end doing to service that request? And almost always is like a call response kind of relationship. The customer calls for a result or data or information. The back end finds it, does the heavy lifting, and then serves up specifically what the front end user wants. Okay. So in this case, that's a couple of questions, and you can think in these terms. What information is your back end managing? In Airbnb, it's managing accommodations. In Uber, it's managing drivers in your area and matching you up. Okay. If you've got an app for a grocery store, it might be managing the produce section, the inventory, and the prices. So what's the data set that your backend is managing? And what does it do with it? Okay. Google Maps does all kinds of things with the data that it has. Yes, it's a geographic map, but it also has information on transport, it has information on stores, it has information on restaurants. Like it's got data available to it. What is it doing with it? And how is it serving up to the front end, which is what your tablet or your phone is. It's not seeing everything in Google's database. It's not seeing everything in Uber's database. That will be useless to you. Okay. Specifically seeing the answer to your question, to your need, that's what your front end delivers to the user. And then what does the user see and do? What do they see specifically? What do they react with? How do they interface with it? Okay. Yeah. Question? Yeah. The front end could further process what the back end gives it, which is different than what I see and do. Okay. When I go on like a skip the dishes type product, where you're kind of choosing restaurants, on the front end, I mean, I'm picking a restaurant and I'm picking food. That's what I'm doing. But even on the back end, even on the interface, it's got a lot of information for one restaurant. Which information do I want to look at now? Do I want to look at specials? Do I want to look at the full menu? Do I want to look at reviews? You know what I mean? So even when I pull up that information for that one restaurant, the front end is probably still filtering some of that to make it more palatable and consumable by the end user. Okay. Yes, they overlap a little bit, but this just gives you a playing field to sort of fully describe what you're doing. When you say user see and do, that more implies what am I touching and feeling? Okay. Am I swiping left or swiping right? Okay. Am I zooming in on a map? How am I interfacing with that information? Describe the simplest and least expensive way you could prototype your project. Now, in fact, mock-ups is probably it. Something like that. Physically drawing out your application, and we're going to get to covering that in a little bit. But is there anything else you could do to test your assumptions? And I'm talking about spending almost no money, if not no money, in order to validate at least a little bit what your concept is. Okay. Oftentimes that involves developing a prototype. As simple as you can, as inexpensively as you can. And I'll reference, for example, I might have talked about it last week, when they were deciding whether text to speech and operating your computer by voice was a good idea. Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, they tested this multiple times. They would go to the public and say, would you like to be able to talk to your computer and use that to do your work? Oh, yes, I'd love to do that. That'd be so awesome. Okay. 90% of people said, yeah, that's a great idea. Do you actually talk to your computer on a day-to-day basis?
Can I ask you a question?
Okay,
Uh,
sure, online.
so where to submit this workbook? But I'm just like I have a meeting coming up, so that's just I'm asking the question. So after
Yep.
finishing the
You,
workbook, where to upload this thing?
okay, so the question about where to submit, basically you're going to email it to me. So you complete this workbook and then
Okay.
email it back to me.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's Todd_Graham@cbu.ca. So
Okay.
you'll be able to find that on the website too.
Okay. Thank you.
So if I asked people, would they want a voice operated computer? Of course they do. But what they found was when you put 10 people in a room and they all start talking to their computers, how well does that work? Okay. Well, how did they determine that? Well, they actually ran a prototype. I think they call it, what do they call it? It's one of those, anyway. Basically, there's somebody in the box doing the work rather than the computer. So what they did was hooked up a computer, put a microphone on it, but put the keyboard and the mouse in another room. And that person in that room was listening to your commands, and he was actually doing everything, or, you know. And what they discovered was that, oh, when people actually interact that way, they don't like it. It doesn't work. So they didn't build the program in order to do voice recognition to run the computer. They just put someone else in another room to push the buttons. And they determined pretty quickly that no one really wants that. Okay. We've all got Siri on our phones, but we really don't use it that much. If you think about how often you use Siri on your phone, it's kind of like you stop what you're doing and then you all of a sudden, is the room quiet? Yeah. Am I driving? Is there other machinery operating? Like, can I use Siri? Like you go through all those things in your head. And yeah, it's semi-convenient. It is convenient, but in a very narrow spectrum. You're really not going to sit in your office with 5 other people around you and be talking to your computer to surf the web or even to type an email. It just doesn't work functionally in the real world. They spent dollars doing that, not thousands or millions of dollars. They literally just put a microphone and a speaker there. They tested Amazon, Siri, and what do you call it, Alexa, the same way. Like the first test versions of Alexa was a microphone with someone else doing the search and speaking back the results. Okay. So they spent almost nothing determining what worked, okay, and how it would work. So with that in mind, and we're going to go through looking at mock-ups, with that in mind, think about what might be another step you might undertake to test your idea, hopefully with almost no investment. Okay. With that said, there's a link here for mock-ups, which is I'm going to show you in a minute. So basically, you're going to complete the mock-ups template, or complete your template for mock-ups, and then you're just going to copy the link. You're going to share it, and you're going to copy the link into here. And that way I can just click on it and have a look at your design template. Okay. There's also a couple of screens here that you can draw out your ideas, and just print those off and start drawing stuff, right? And if you want to include those separately, if you want to scan them and send them in, that's fine. It's not necessary. I don't need photorealistic versions of stuff, okay? I'm really not looking for that. I'm looking more specifically for, like, what is the workflow, which is what we're going to get with mock-ups, okay? So a box that says picture here is perfect. Spending 9 hours to find the right picture, that doesn't help me evaluate, you know what I mean? So the purpose of mock-ups is not to spend a lot of time actually looking for, like worrying about the minutiae of what font should I use and what picture should I include, but to actually use standalone proxies for elements and then wireframe, like a flow chart, how your application works. Question? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Hello?
Hi, just be 1 sec. I've got someone here asking a question, so, and I'll get right back to you. Okay. Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah. So the question is, or the statement there was someone already had some drawings and illustrations. By all means, send those in. But I'm less interested in what the screenshots of the pictures than the actual wireframe flow of how this works. Okay. Online, someone had a question?
Yeah, hi, my name is Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, so sorry, I actually just signed in not too long. But I actually got the part you talked about the link. And I remember there was a class we spoke, I also asked the question that, can I have my design made from Figma, for example, and then I would just put it there in the box. So you would just click on the link and everything would be there, the whole, everything's gonna be there, the whole case study, the whole
Okay.
mock-ups, everything.
Okay. So if you've got another application that does work like this is there's a couple of different applications, Figma. I just have mock-ups because it's free, it's accessible, it focuses on workflow, so that's kind of what I'm mostly interested in. So if you've got those elements in something like Figma, or I'm trying to think of another application, there's a few of them that do that kind of same kind
XD,
of ideation. Yeah, XD. By all means, if you
Sketch.
can get me a link for that, if you can
Okay,
get me a
okay.
link for that, that'd be great. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions online? Okay. I'm going to move over to mock-ups now. I think I am. There we are. Okay. So mock-ups basically is like a wireframe development environment. You can sign up and you get a couple of screens free. You probably only need one screen. But basically what you can do is you can pull out elements, okay? Quick buttons, text, okay, different devices, and you can bring them into your design workflow, and you can start to quickly ideate how this is going to function. So it doesn't really need or request that you come up with photorealistic. In fact, it's probably best that you don't spend that time because we're trying to quickly get to the nut of your idea, and spending 8 hours looking for the perfect picture doesn't give me any value in evaluating these projects. You'll notice that on the left-hand side, there's a number of different elements that you can drag out. They've got icons for different things, a little wrench there and a little suitcase there. And of course, you can make them bigger and smaller and, fit what you want. Under stencils, you'll see, for example, here, devices. So when you make your account, you've got on the left a number of different main categories of pre-made elements. The stencils has a lot in it, and in stencils there's devices. So if I wanted an Apple Watch, I can pull out an Apple Watch. If I wanted a Google Pixel 3, I can add a Google Pixel 3. It's got iOS components, so like the stuff that makes up the screen, like a keyboard, away. Confirmation boxes. So you can just drag those out and you can add them to your design, and you can sort of iterate and ideate and give me an example of the workflow. So this basic template they give you with, it's got you can see a couple of screens here. And I'm just going to kind of maybe zoom in on one or two of them here. So you'll see that we've got this report screen with some nicely built graphics. I mean, they all come prepackaged. But you'll also notice that there's these little lines that kind of indicate how workflow works. Maybe that comes from here. Maybe that element comes from over there. You can kind of move these things around a little bit. I'm doing a horrible job of it, but you get the idea. That goes over to there. Okay. It allows you to sort of pull out, and maybe I want to make an indication that sort of this screen kind of goes down to another one or pulls out to somewhere else. I can click on these corners and say, well, I want that to come into here. The workflow brings you over there. So it gives you these little quick wireframe elements. Then you can just draw a box, okay? And you can make a new little flow chart, and that gives you basic workflow. You can pull out the elements of an iOS device or a tablet or a screen or a watch or something. You can pull those out and you can indicate, you know, what screen leads to what, leads to what, leads to what. Question? Yep. Yeah.
What are you more interested in? You want to see how the front, let's say a user makes a request.
Yeah.
And then how the front end, again, coordinates with the back end to give you that, give user that data. We want to see, again, the coordination of front end and back end and overall service. Or do you want to see, how maybe one page of an application leads to other page? Let's say I click on that button and then what can I see?
Okay.
And then I click another button and then what can I see?
Okay, so the question is, I guess, to the detail of what we want to see and the front end versus the back end. So, so for example, I'm just going to make another new, there's a bunch of templates here. I'm just going to pick a different template. I don't know. Let's see, one's got some
Or do
computers
you want
already
to
on
see
this.
zoomed out picture? Let's say, my user does this and then this happens and then this happens. An overall, flow chart.
A flow chart's good. You can make a quick flow chart. I was going to get to that, but to address your server issue or question, what I'm going to do is just quickly, I'm going to like get rid of most of these. I'm just keep using this as a starting template. There we go. So say that's my application, and what I want to do is show a, I want to show, I don't know, a computer, a server. So maybe that's my server. I know, I had upgrade plans. I got too many items in my flow chart. You guys should be fine with the limited number. I just got too many items used. I don't want to upgrade, go away. Yeah, that's, I got too many things open here on this. Yes. Let me have a look. Actually, let me get rid of those other pages. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of that page. I'm gonna get rid of that page. Where was I? Move to trash. I had just too many things as I've been opening up. Okay. 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 So
That's what I'm wondering. Then how can, coordinate back end provide that service? So
okay, so
what do you want?
so basically, to answer that question, if you want to illustrate a relationship between a front end and a back end,
Yeah.
okay, so what I've done is I've dragged out a couple of devices, and I might say, well, that relates to the back end, okay, and I could you know, add some text or information there in order to describe that relationship and what happens. Okay, so if that's integral, that's how to do it. There is a limit of it. Was it 400 objects or something? So like, you don't have to make everything super detailed. Like 400 objects is more than enough. And you can add some text labels in there in order to illustrate what you're, you know, what you're talking about. Object limit exceeded. Okay, that's all right. Okay. So for the flow chart part, okay, and this again is this would be about a limit of what I'd be expecting for a flow chart. Okay, I wouldn't expect to see a lot more in detail than this, but this should give me a bit of an idea as to how your application is going to work. You can pull out flowchart elements and you can move them around, and you can sort of annotate them and, you know, change the text, add text, and describe, you know, how your application actually works. You can work with relationships between elements. So come up with a basic flowchart, and then come up with a basic illustration of how your on-screen elements and different main screens or feature screens relate to one another. Okay. And keep it relative. Don't go over the top with thinking you need 400, 500, 900 objects. Keep it as simple as possible. And it takes longer to really competently think about and consider what your application does than to sit down and just keep dragging out icons or listing 900 features. Really get to the core and the nub of what your project does. Okay. And when you're done, you can export your away and get a link for that. Okay. So sharing. Okay, that's too many options there, but just because I've had this open, I think, for so long, it's probably just thinks I've got more there than I do. Yeah. I'm just wondering where they are. Oh, wait a second, because I've got all these up here. That's going on. I've got multiple things open here. Yeah. There.
Have an undo button, like to go back.
I don't know specifically. If I did this and I hit undo, it does. Yeah, so if I move that and I hit Command Control Z.
Oh yeah, it works. It works.
Yeah.
Which better than flow
That's normally the undo button in any application, Control Z. And then if you have to redo it, Control Y.
Okay. So, okay, that should be better. So, you should be able to export this in sharing. Right now, it's not doing it because I think I've got so many things that have been opened up in this, it just kind of lost track of where I am. And ultimately, hopefully, you'll have like a flow chart of this detail outlining the way your process works, and you'll have a sort of a standard sort of a screen that will allow you to illustrate a little bit about how your application functions. Yeah. Okay. If you have any other questions with that, just email me and I'll see what I can do to help you. If you're using another application like Figma, that's fine too, as long as it's got an online link. So I'm relatively ready to be relatively open and accommodating and seeing examples of this. So you want to save everything as a PDF, and as long as it's not too big, like I don't want gigabytes of pages, but you know, a couple of pages saved as a PDF would probably be fine as well. And I can kind of put all that together and evaluate it. Question? Be midnight the 31st, and that's tomorrow, I guess. Yeah. 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 Tomorrow midnight. Well, there we go. There's always something to do. Any questions online? Any questions online? Okay. So email me if you have any questions between here and tomorrow evening, I guess, tomorrow night. Email me in your finished workbook and include the link to the mock-ups, or if you have a link to something else, that'd be fine as well. Other than that, look to the website, look to the Teams group that's online. The recording from last week and the previous weeks is all there. There's other resources. The workbook is downloadable. You probably all have that at this point, though. And you know, I'll be putting this video up in a bit as well. There's also the videos there from last year. So I think I probably was better at describing mock-ups last year. So feel free to look at the video from last year. I think it was probably the last session I did back then as well. If there's no other questions, I wish you all good luck and look forward to seeing all your projects. Thanks.